welcome, everybody. Hi, it's Kathy Frey here from IMCO, the International Integrative Maternity Healthcare Organisation. So we like to be global thought leaders on perinatal integrative medicine. And welcome to another of our weekly webinars, which we're calling our maternity natural health webinars. And it's great to see all you starting to ping in. Brilliant. And please do go into the chat area, which is down the bottom, and let us know whereabouts you are in the world and what your role is. So if you're a health practitioner, you may be a holistic practitioner, you may be a birth practitioner, or you may be a woman expecting a baby, or you may be a mixture of all of the above. So let us know. And I'm very, very pleased to bring to you all today Lynn Korst. And Lynn is part of an amazing organisation, which if you don't know about, she's going to explain to you all about. And yeah, so she's got some wonderful wisdom for us today, where she's going to be talking about prenatal and perinatal psychology, seeing things from the baby's perspective, which I'm very excited to hear about, and I'm sure you all are. And so the format of today is that shortly Lynn's going to sort of take over, and she's got a fabulous PowerPoint that she's going to go through with you, and that'll take about half an hour or so of her presentation. And if you've got any questions, please put them into the Q&As. There's a little box down a little icon you can click at the bottom of the screen to put your question into that Q&A section, and we'll make sure that all the questions get answered before we wind up today, in probably about 45 minutes from now or thereabouts. So yes, let's so Lynn, have a wave, darling.
Hi.
Say hello.
Yes.
So Lynn Korst is a parent educator for pregnant couples and new parents in her private practice, Discover Parenthood. So Lynn is a graduate of APPPAH's Prenatal and Perinatal Education Certification Program, which is, I do want you to explain more about today, because what you guys are doing there is so important. So important. And she's also a graduate of the Castellano Prenatal and Birth Therapy Foundation training. She's also a certified NAM, neuroaffective, which I'm sure she'll explain a little bit more, relational model, and also a practitioner who supports transforming and integrating early development trauma. So Lynn is also trained in attachment science, play therapy, RIE, which is resources for infant educators, and is a Gottman trained birthing baby home, bringing baby home facilitator. So Lynn is on the APPPAH board and is Vice President of Outreach and Development there, which is how we got to know each other. Yep. And yeah, so that's welcome, Lynn. And let's just have a little quick chat, see where everybody's coming in from. So we've got a bit of a mix going on here, which is fantastic. We've got midwives and a lovely woman who is that's Angela. Okay, and yeah, she's almost 39 weeks, so about to have your baby. There's my friend Nikki from Warkworth. Hi, Nikki. And yeah, welcome everybody. And of course, we've got people coming in from overseas as well. So look, I'm going to hand over now to Lynn, and she's going to take over the screen and tell us your fantastic information. So thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Kathy. It's such an honor to be here, and I love what you're doing, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you today a little bit more about APPPAH and what we're doing in this organization, just to spread it more around the world. So I do have a PowerPoint that I am going to share, a couple of slides that I will be able to share with you just to explain a little bit more so that you'll get to see. Does that show up okay? So
yeah, that's all perfect. Can see it perfectly.
Okay, great. So I would like to introduce you all to APPPAH if you're not familiar with it already. It was founded almost 40 years ago by a psychologist, Dr. Tom Burney. He wrote the book, The Secret Life of the Unborn Child, which is fairly well known around the world, and as well as many, many other books. And also, one of our early pioneers was David Chamberlain. He wrote the book, Babies Remember Birth. And they were both psychologists that had these practices that started learning about this through their own experiences with their clients. And one of our fundamental beliefs in APPPAH is that babies are conscious and aware from the very beginning of life, beginning even at conception and even before. So as my role and as Director of Outreach for APPPAH, I get to the wonderful opportunity to meet lots of organizations around the world, such as yours and many others, that support this kind of paradigm about birth. And it's so inspiring to see what's really happening in some places that we would never know about. There are currently over 20 prenatal and perinatal psychology organizations that are affiliated with APPPAH. And I wanted to share just a few examples of some of what they're doing, just for you all to get a feel for how widespread this work is. One of them is in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, Brazil. There's a pre and perinatal psychologist, Carla Machado, who recently opened a brand new, beautiful, government funded, she spearheaded it, but she ended up getting government funding to get a center for pregnancy. And it's beautiful, it's on the water. And all pregnant women in the community can come there and get amazing support with body work or alternative medical care, doula support from her as a pre and perinatal therapist. So it's just exquisite prenatal care, and it's a model that I would love to see spread around the world. And also in Brazil is Laura Uplinger. She's somebody that's been a part of our organization for many, many years and does amazing work. She recently completed a fabulous documentary about prenatal care and birth psychology that I just got to see the introduction of, but we are going to be viewing that at our International Congress, which we're planning on having next November in Los Angeles, which you're all invited to, and we're all going to just hold out hope that we're all traveling and meeting by then. But that's the plan. Another example I wanted to share is out of Turkey. There is a Center for Prenatal and Perinatal Education that developed this team approach to birth that I think is amazing. They teach a team which consists of a OBGYN, a midwife, a doula, and a pre and perinatal therapist that follows the mom and baby through pregnancy, through the birth, and the postpartum time as a team, and then integrates all those experiences throughout. And it's just phenomenal work. I love what they're doing there. And APPPAH also had an opportunity this past year to have a conference co-sponsored in India, where over 200 OBGYNs showed up. And you could tell all the amazing things that they're doing in India to reach that audience and to really have an impact with doctors and hospitals. So it's just amazing. It's just really inspiring to see the different work that's going on out there. Even in Japan, we've got Dr. Ikigawa, who is doing his prenatal memory project, where he's interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people on their prenatal memories and documenting it and presenting it. And it's just really just touching to hear the stories. And just this week, we're had another meeting. We had our second meeting, but we are launching an APPPAH chapter for Australia and New Zealand that Kathy, I think it's your sister-in-law's one that's involved with us, but we're inviting whoever's interested, if you are interested in plugging into what we're doing. We've got a Facebook page created, so just email me and I'll share my email at the end. Let me know, and I'd love to get you involved. So it's really exciting to be able to just spread this work out into the world and get more and more people involved. So today, what I'm going to share with you is birth from the baby's perspective, which is a fairly novel way to look at birth. And this is also the name of a course that we offer in our on our website, and it's a longer course, and we are going to offer it to this audience at a very discounted rate at half off. So Kathy's going to send out a follow-up email with details on how you can learn more about this. But today is just a very short introduction. And so when you ask the question, do we really remember our birth? It's a good question, because if you go up into your mind and try to find it there, you're not going to find it, because it's not actually in our head. We have cellular memory in our bodies, and this is our implicit cellular memory, is the memory that we have before we have words. It's our pre-verbal memory. And so we have this somatic, it's called body or body memory, throughout this early time of life, up to 18 months, that this is where we're really holding all of these memories. And then after about 18 months to 2 years, this is when our explicit memory comes online, which is the memory in our heads. That's the memory of like, oh, wait, I can remember that. So after 18 months, you have both your implicit memory of all the experiences that reside in the body from prenatal life, your birth experience, and all this bonding time, as well as then now your explicit memories. So we've got both the conscious memory and the body memory. And so if you're asked, like, how are we actually able to access these memories, is a good question, because these early memories actually show up in our lives every day, but we just don't recognize them. They're in our, we can say subconscious, but it's really more of a cellular memory. And we're not really used to thinking of sensations in our body, because that's where they reside, as actual memories. But if we wanted to intentionally access them, there are several different ways that you're able to do that. But it's important, you know, there's different modalities that allow you to do this in a safe space. But it's really important that you find a skilled practitioner when you're doing this. because if there was trauma in your early life, you do not want to be in a situation where you get re-traumatized. And so it's really important that you do it carefully. And I actually learned about my own birth in a process workshop called a womb surround with Ray Castellino, who is one of my teachers that you mentioned. I've done his foundations training. And during this workshop, it was an incredible, pivotal experience for me, that because I knew nothing about my birth when I went into it. My mom actually passed away when I was 24 years old, so I couldn't ask her. And I had discovered there that I actually had a lot of birth trauma from a forceps delivery that I didn't even know. And I will never forget, after that experience in the workshop, being able to look around and see that people actually now know that I had that trauma. And to have it be seen and acknowledged was such an incredible relief in my body. It really changed things for me. And it's such a unique experience that once you have felt this unmistakable sensation of what it was like to be in the womb or being birthed, you can never look at birth or babies in the same way again. It's just a really profoundly changing perspective on this early time of life. And this is how I became so passionate about this work, and have been a part of APPPAH for a number of years. And I've been doing a lot of extensive training in this area, because it's incredible how the difference that it can make, especially if you heal those traumas earlier in life, which is what we're going to talk about today. But because these memories are somatic and basically hidden in the body, it's one of the reasons that this is not widespread knowledge around the world, that people kind of look at you sideways, you know, birth psychology, what's that? And part of the reason is because many people actually are disconnected from their bodies and their birth experiences because of the trauma that might have happened during that time, and just have resistance to this, which is fine. We have to honor and respect where people are at and who's called to learn more about this work, or just might be curious about their own births. And that's where our mission at APPPAH is, to educate as many people as possible who are willing to learn about the importance of this early time of life, and to show how these early experiences always remain a part of our consciousness and in our bodies. So as we move forward here, and this is a quote that came from a study on epigenetics, which is a field of study from Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's been a part of our organization for many, many years, and he's actually going to be speaking at our Congress in the next year. The greatest impact we have on the development of our child is during conception and in the womb. And so the science of epigenetics tells us how important the environment around the cell or the developing fetus influences the development of that organism. And this makes pregnancy one of the most important times of life and phases of life. So honoring this time for moms by giving them the care they need to protect both their physical well-being as well as their emotional well-being. It's so important. And one of the things that we teach in our courses is prenatal bonding. And if the mom's taught prenatal bonding practices that helps her better connect to the baby and build that relationship as early as possible, this has significant impact on the effects of birth outcomes. And there are scientific studies in many, many places around the world that have done this, that show that moms who participate in prenatal bonding practices with the baby, they have easier births, less premature births, less interventions, less C-sections, and significantly less postpartum depression. So it's one of the most significant and easiest ways to really make a huge difference. But if we go back and look from the perspective of the baby in the womb, and they are, this little being inside is always managing what's happening in its environment. And we don't usually view it in that way, but the baby itself has its own natural flow of its primal energy and health that's running through it and allowing the baby to grow at an incredibly rapid rate. So it's got its own energy that it's managing, but it is also managing and meeting and becoming intertwined with the mom's energy. And so the baby is always paying attention and being impacted by how attentive the mom might be to her own needs. This is something that can be felt by the baby, and how the mom processes her own stress is something that's being registered by the baby and learned by the baby. Even her own ability to just relax and how she does that is being learned in the baby's nervous system. So even just how attentive she is to the baby inside of her lets that baby know, the baby, that, you know, she sees me, I matter, I'm here. And it will impact that development and their energy to be recognized. Even how the mom relates to the outer world to feel like, is it a safe place or not a safe place? These are all things that now the baby is learning in the womb for itself. And it's designed this way because it's wiring the baby's nervous system to adapt to the environment that it's being born into. And it's a beautiful design, but it's also an important issue, especially in the time that we're having right now with this pandemic and how moms and babies are feeling and being treated and potentially being separated. This is all a big issue, but I want to share one other quote from Dr. Verney that he says, "Our personalities are formed more in utero than any other time of life." So by tending to this very sacred time of life and caring for pregnant moms, like the center that I mentioned in Brazil, and treating them with that kind of care can really significantly impact the well-being of our society as a whole. And so most of us are not typically aware of or look at the developmental needs that begin during these really early phases of life. And so when we look at these developmental needs, which are more than just physical, these are and social, emotional needs that become so important for us as beings, as adults. And we just don't realize how the impact that this early time is having. And the earlier that we can attune to them has this cascading effect on our long-term health and well-being. So for example, during conception, this is something that there's questions that could be considered if there's certain symptoms that are coming up with somebody, that there might be things to consider, like, was I wanted? Was I conceived by a loving act? Or was I conceived outside of the womb? There are some studies looking at how IVF impacts children and adults later in life, because the memories of conception will be in the body and form some beliefs inside. Also, pregnancy, we just talked about the importance of prenatal bonding, but another important aspect to consider is to recognize that the baby is having its own experience, and to differentiate between what the mom's experience is and the baby's experience. Like when the mom is really stressed and having a hard day, to be able to say, you know, baby, this is not about you. I'm having a hard day. In the baby's mind, it's all about them, and they can't differentiate. So the more the mom's able to talk to the baby and do that differentiation, really helps build a stronger sense of safety and coherency for the baby. And during birth, you know, it's just to recognize that birth is a really big experience for babies, and they want to tell their story, and they actually are telling their story every day, but we just aren't trained in really seeing what they're saying, or seeing the movements that they're making and the sounds that they're making and how they're expressing it. And so the developmental need here is to really be seen and listened to, and getting some accurate reflection of what really happened for that baby. And also the birth of a mother, the new mother, is a big experience, and she needs to be able to tell her story from her point of view, and to be able to integrate her experiences. And this is so important for the bonding process. And it's also might be very different from what the birth team might have witnessed. They might have thought the birth went great, but actually there were some traumatic experiences that might have happened from the perspective of the baby or the mom. And so also during bonding, you know, this is where the bonding process begins ideally with the skin to skin with the mom and baby. And this is something that we like to call the sacred hour, where the co-regulation begins between the mom and the baby, and their nervous systems are able to co-regulate. And developmentally, the baby needs this co-regulation to wire its nervous system to develop properly until it can learn self-regulation. And this is a very, it's something that takes time and is unique for every baby. And also, many people don't realize that when a woman gives birth, her own birth experiences get activated in the body. And this is a subconscious thing, so it's not always recognized. I know when I had some complications with my first birth of my son, and I didn't realize until I started doing this work, going back and realizing the connection between my own experiences and what I experienced delivering him. So by being able to go back and heal some of that work before you have children can be immensely helpful. And so the more we're able to really look at and attune to these early developmental needs during this early time of life, it really sets the stage for how we're able to get our needs met as adults, and really helps just the energy flowing through our body by being able to release any traumas that might have happened during that time. And so speaking of traumas, so in the definition of trauma that I like to use is just any overwhelming experience that was too much for the nervous system to process. And this quote here from Corinne Bell, who's a pre- and perinatal therapist: "The past is very much alive in our bodies in the present." And this is in our somatic memory. And our bodies are holding the totality of our experiences from preconception to now. And so here are 3 different kinds of trauma that we can experience that cut us off from our own life force energy, or they can end up blocking, causing blockages in the body. And the more that we're able to see these and work through them at an early time, helps prevent this cascading effects. So the significant events that might happen during in utero, for example, can be anything from an injury to the mom, or an illness, or even the death of a loved one. Anything that's causing her a significant trauma to her is going to be felt by the baby. Also, birth experiences. This could be emergency C-sections, unexpected complications, or even an authoritative doctor can be a very traumatic experience. Bonding experiences can be, not being able to breastfeed, or going to the NICU. And some of these things might not be perceived by the birth team as traumas, but to the baby or to the mom, they are things that are being held in the body and need to be processed or worked through. And so the second form of trauma is one that's much more difficult to see, which is ongoing chronic misattunement, is the term, but it's really, the parent's inability to really be present enough to see the child, that there is just a big disconnect happening, and the child is going to feel this. And this is something, that is ongoing chronic misattunement. It's not, our traditional, just our regular imperfections as parents, because we know we're not always attuned to our children in a perfect way, far from it. So I'm a big believer in the good enough mother. But this is something that has a big impact on the baby's nervous system, and this is where early patterns and structures start to show up, the survival structures in the child that then also have that cascading effect on the rest of their lives. And the last one are the intergenerational experiences that we carry in our DNA, that we all have. So it can be very healing to go back and understand your parents' and grandparents' early life experiences, because many of the traumas that they were not able to process or can get passed down through generations. So any of these can have a significant effect. And I'm sure you might be familiar with the ACEs score, which are events that happen later. And I think I'm trying to bring your attention to really how early these traumas can start. But the good news is that any traumatic event can be processed and integrated. And I've got a slide at the very end that talks about different healing modalities that are used to be able to address these. And so some of these early traumas do get in the way of the healthy attachment and bonding process. So as babies, we come to know ourselves by what's being reflected back to us from the people around us. And they are mirrors for us to learn about life. That they're also energetically, we are attuning to their nervous systems. So the more settled they are and incoherent in their nervous system, it's going to settle the baby. I am currently in a family practitioner training with Ray Castellino, and he shares a lot of videos from his research clinic in California. And we get trained. The training is to be able to look at the family field. And specifically, we look at the space and relationship between the mom and the baby and the way that they connect and disconnect. And also the field of the dad or the partner and the baby and how they connect and disconnect. But also, very importantly, is the field between the mom and the partner and how they are connecting or disconnecting. Because this is often causing a lot of disruption inside of the baby. So being able to provide layers of support around the family to have them share some of these early experiences from the birth, from pregnancy, anything that might have happened, to be able to process them at a very early stage does so much to help the family really be able to settle and to negotiate what is a really challenging period of life. So it's really incredible work, and we teach a lot of the details about this also in our prenatal and perinatal educator program with APPPAH. Because ideally, we're looking to support a secure attachment, and we're much more likely to have a secure attachment when we are attuning to all of the developmental needs, physically, as well as emotionally, our emotional needs, our cognitive needs, our social and relational needs, as well as our spiritual needs. And even if we were to take a deeper look at that diagram there, the model, that this is really how we come to know ourselves. And you can see how our physical experiences, positive and negative, our ability to be able to really have good movement in our physical bodies is going to influence our emotional capacity, being able to really access the full spectrum of emotions. And that has an impact on our cognitive belief structures and what we come to believe about ourselves, which then impacts our social and relational relationships. in the world and how we're able to connect or disconnect. And this has an impact on our spiritual connections of really what's holding us in the larger field in the world. And so where we put our attention influences our perception, which informs our experience. And where we put our attention really matters. And so by being intentional about putting our attention towards the places inside of us that really need the care, as opposed to outside of us, which tends to be more of our focus, but really being able to put our attention inside. And when we know that babies are capable of learning and remembering and communicating right from the very beginning, it dramatically changes the way in which we treat them and we interact with them, both before and after birth. So it's just, this is a different lens, a different way of looking at and attuning to moms and babies and the field. And you know, our culture of birth over many, many decades has been varied around the world, and has not always been very attuned in this way from the baby. It's been very disconnected, and it has caused a lot of collective trauma that's been passed down through the generations. And in order to heal this type of trauma, we really need to look at conception and pregnancy and birth in a whole new way. And that's the paradigm that we're really trying to shift. So all of these experiences that I have been talking about from the baby's perspective is what creates a child consciousness in our bodies. And this is something that stays with us our whole lives into adulthood. It's a part of us, and it's a matter of our own self-awareness to know how those subconscious implicit memories are affecting us, and if they're managing us or if we're managing them. And that's that's something that I've had to get a tremendous amount of support around to heal my early trauma. And the nice thing is that, you know, I did it at an older age after my kids were born and grown. So it is never too late. So I'm very encourage anybody at any stage to be able to do this work. So I have a few just what I think are important questions for all of us as practitioners who work with moms and babies to just consider. So how can we as practitioners, you know, build our capacity to hold the totality of our client's experience, meaning all of these things that I've been talking about and the types of traumas that might exist inside of them? How can we learn to deeply listen to our client's story and provide the necessary healing to be able to hold them in those spaces? And another question is, how can we work with our leading edge to grow our capacity as practitioners? And we use this term in our training, leading edge, because that is basically another way of saying, how are we dealing with our own stuff? Because our stuff is going to come up. Actually, every time that we go to a birth, or we hold space for a birth, or are working with pregnant moms and couples, our own implicit birth memories can get activated, and they're always there. So we need to learn how to become more aware of them and how to hold them in a compassionate place. And so the answer, of course, is we do not do it alone. You know, we all need a tremendous amount of support and mentors, and supervision, even friends to cry with, because we are all designed to support one another. And I practice this a lot. I'm on regular supervision calls and do a lot to get support in this area. So here, lastly, I'm just sharing some of the different like therapeutic healing modalities that can support healing from early trauma. And I think I'll just, want to emphasize that it's really important to get somatic, body-centered work. That's really essential to repattern and heal these and integrate these early traumas. And there's many of them that are out there. There's somatic experiencing, and NARM is something that I practice and have been trained in. There's biodynamic cranial sacral therapy is amazing work. It is a prerequisite for all of Ray Castellino's trainings to be able to have that lens of looking at the health in the body. Makes a significant difference. Holistic chiropractic care is something that I'm a big believer in, and I get regular chiropractic care all the time, and especially ones that are really well trained with babies, and the Webster technique can be very helpful in healing. Pre and perinatal therapy. There are many pre and perinatal therapists available through APPPAH. So if you can go to our website, and there are many people that are trained in this work. And trauma skills practitioners, there's a lot of people that are highly skilled in doing trauma work that can be very helpful. I like movement, dance, and play therapies. This is really, really helpful to get in the body because that's where the traumas are. And our music and sound healing is incredibly effective to be able to, sometimes music and sound can reach those areas inside of us that we can't reach in other ways. And holistic body work, of course, and alternative health care, which Kathy is something that you do an amazing job of promoting, and have all kinds of speakers that speak to different ways to be able to support moms and babies. So that is all I have. I'd be able to answer any questions if people have any questions, but I encourage you, if you'd like to learn more, go to the website, birthpsychology.com is APPPAH's website, and I can be reached at outreach at Birth Psychology if you've got any questions for me, but I'm happy to answer any now that if there are any.
Oh, thank you so much, Lynn. It's just been absolutely fascinating listening through. We do have a question from a little bit earlier where Heather was just asking if you could mention specifically some of the studies that, sometimes you'd sort of say there was a study on blah, blah, but is there any particular studies of the references of those that people can look up that that would be, particularly of interest?
Well, there are several, and I don't know specifically which one she talked about. And I know because this is a very condensed version of this work. On our website, if you go, there's a place that's called Free Content, and in there's a lot of lectures that are available. We have a journal that we publish, a scientific journal that we've been publishing for the last 40 years So there are endless studies, scientific studies that are in our journal that people could access that way. And yeah, so I
Yeah,
guess I would
it's
just point people to to the website, because there are many, and I can't list off the top of my head because I don't know specifically which issue she was talking about.
yeah, understand. I mean, and we also at INCO put out every 6 weeks or so our journal, which is highlighting latest bits of research. And yeah, so there really is a lot out there. And yeah, but don't hesitate to contact Lynn direct if there's a particular topic that somebody was after. Got another interesting question here from Tanya. Does rebirthing fit within the framework, or do APPPAH see that as something quite different?
You know, it all depends on the context of how it's held, because there are so many different modalities out there, and I can't speak to exactly how that's being practiced as rebirthing, but I believe, you know, the intention is to provide a healing environment and you know, a healing to be able to do it, have a new imprint of something on top of the trauma. It's just something, NARM actually practices it. The work that I do actually works a little bit differently and likes to work in the present moment of how things are showing up in our lives in the present moment, and dealing with and just being able to work with our agency as an adult to be able to heal those early imprints. And what I found is that that's it's a quicker way of being able to really heal and be able to move through some of those than trying to actually go back and rebirth. But I'm, you know, I think I'm open. There's lots and lots of different ways to be able to heal.
Yes. So we are going to need to wind this up soon. So anybody in the audience, if you've got any questions that Lynn hasn't answered that you would like to ask, put them through now. That would be great. Just put them into that Q&A box at the bottom. And thank you for all your messages on the chat today. It's really lovely for us here at INCO to get your positive feedback about what we're doing as well, because obviously it's all sort of volunteer staff, and being able to get these amazing people on board. And isn't Zoom just so awesome to be able to do this? And I think that I love some of the comments that you know we're saying there, Lynn, today. I think that particularly that the birthing team often don't perceive a particular birth as traumatic, especially when you hear the word normal birth, and which is quite a different thing in a medical term from natural birth. Sometimes, you know, it's just an NVD and normal vaginal delivery, and we all know, well, yeah, that wasn't really very natural. Yeah, so there's that trauma that goes on all the time. I also found it fascinating that you commented particularly about that the research shows so clearly that with that positive prenatal bonding, the impact that it has, that cascade of normalcy that it creates, that, you know, the women end up with easier births, with less premature births, with less interventions, less C-sections, significantly less postnatal depression. Because I think that any of us who are midwives, who have that real holistic sort of way that we encourage our women to be thinking, we know it makes such a difference to their outcomes. So it's just, you know, another layer of a reminder, really, which is so important. And is there anything that we haven't covered, Lynn, or that you'd like to sort of add to the end here?
You know, I just want to add that we do have a prenatal and perinatal educator certificate program, which is right now it's a year-long program that goes really in depth into this work and teaches things, you know, like prenatal bonding and just really understanding the science underneath all of this. So if people are interested, there is more information there. And I love the way that it's implemented because you get a mentor through the program that's somebody that's been a graduate of the program, and they help walk you through this because it can activate a lot of your early material, which is which is one of the reasons you want to do it, is to be able to really heal and be more effective as a practitioner. So I just, it was a profoundly impactful experience for me. So I just want to encourage people to check that out.
So just to remind everybody that the information, you know, that training is available for everybody around the world to connect in with you guys. Even, you know,
it is all online, right?
Yeah, it's all online. Katie has, just to wind up, Katie is obviously in New Zealand, who's just asked this question: is there anybody in New Zealand that's doing this work? And you mentioned earlier, I've got my sister-in-law, who's Dagi Haida Frey. She's got her womb time. And can you, because she is qualified or trained within the APPPAH system, I personally am not. So is she the only practitioner, or is there's quite a few, I think, in Australia as well? Do you want to just explain what's happening around the world?
So yeah, this is I would ask her, you know, just send me an email at outreach@birthpsychology.com, and I can she can join the Facebook group that we just started for New Zealand and Australia, and there's practitioners in there that she could reach out to. So that's where we're starting to form a group where we can collect as many people as we can that are trained in this.
Yes, which is just fantastic, particularly for that whole Australasia area. So that is quite new, that formation of getting those practitioners all connecting. I've got one last question here for you, Lynn. Have you heard, I'm sure you have, have you heard of mindful birthing, childbirth, and parenting based on mindfulness-based stress reduction, of teaching people to be aware of body sensations? That's from Margaret in Australia.
Yes, yeah. I mean, mindfulness is fabulous, you know, modality to be able to use in any aspect from, you know, pregnancy on. So yes, we love mindfulness. Actually, we're affiliated with a program called Calm Birth that has meditations for pregnancy and birth and postpartum time. So it is something that's integrated into our program.
Just one last comment we've got here from Laura Lee, and she's saying that I'm doing the PPNE course right now, and it's brilliant! Exclamation mark. So yeah, that's just great. And I see that there was quite a few of you here today who have done some of APPPAH training, which is really, really great. So we're going to wind it up now, and look, thank you so much, Lynn, for your time today, and it's wonderful to have our organisations connecting, and it's just great to be able to, you know, spread this information around, and it would all be pointless, Lynn and I sitting here right now, if there was no audience. So, you know, a great thanks to you all for finding the time to attend today. And so we farewell you and thank you, and wish you all a lovely rest of your week, and hope to see you. I hope to see you perhaps here next week with our next webinar. So thank you very much, and thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, bye everybody.